Hi friends, I'm back with another video. We have a lot of new friends here. I'm so happy. We have so many new people on this channel, so thank you everybody. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing positive comments and just like sharing your life experiences and also just for supporting. I'm so happy. I'm almost at 500 subscribers, which is like really crazy, and hopefully we can keep the momentum going. Today I really wanted to talk about authenticity, relationships, and how all of that is impacted when you go on your healing journey, because that's kind of one of the most volatile areas in life, and it's kind of one of the hardest things to really integrate and allow yourself to go through when you're going through your healing journey. But before I do that, I wanted to just reintroduce myself because there's a lot of new people and new faces. So my name is Shivani. I am a fourth year medical student. I am finishing up actually my interviews for psychiatry residency. So hopefully I'd be starting the training process for that this summer. So I'd be and be a psychiatrist. And then I'm also a Reiki master level practitioner. I started this channel because I just wanted to create more of an open space and conversation about the realities of the healing journey and also being able to be a voice that kind of bridges two worlds and fields that we have, like science and spirituality, mysticism and logic, like really bringing the art back into medicine. I'm definitely not one of those people that is anti-medicine, anti-science, anti-logic. I think that there's a lot of those people who completely reject logic and information when they go on their spiritual journey and they take it to an extreme. So if you are one of those people, respectfully, I would ask you to click off because I'm not one of those people. I stand for people that are wanting to be integrated, wanting to bring two worlds together, and also wanting to stop this, like complete virus of like misinformation and spreading misinformation that's going on. So anyways, that's a little bit about me, but I wanted to talk today about what happens when you choose authenticity. What happens when you center yourself in your life and you decide that I'm going to be at the center of my life. I'm going to value myself and my authenticity. And what is the ripple effect of that? How does that show up in your relationships? How do you learn to navigate relationships now that you have these new values and this new version of yourself coming through? And what are like the common challenges that happen when you go through this process? Because I think we talk a lot about like healing and stuff. I think we've done a great job as a collective and as a society just talking about like I'm going through my healing journey and this is what I'm experiencing and et cetera, et cetera. But we still create this facade of like what our lives look like on the outside when we're going through that healing journey. And it is very hard and your relationships can be struggling, if not dying, if not dwindling away. And you probably will go through an isolation slash hermit period in your life. So to start off, what happens is like we go through this healing journey. We oftentimes are dragged through it because we have these crises going on in our lives and we have no choice but to choose authenticity and to choose ourselves, right? Like for whatever reason, a lot of us really fight it because, I mean, let's be real, it's really easy to just live life unconsciously. I don't think I would have done it if I wasn't forced to do it, and I don't think a lot of other people would have done it if they were not forced to do it as well. But nonetheless, we're forced to do it, and we're forced to place ourselves first because nothing else in life seems to be working. And when you reach that point, you're going to start feeling really disconnected from all of your relationships, even the people that you were like super, super close with, right? Like there might be people that you at one point in your life, like I'll share my personal experience, which is like there were a ton of people that I had a pretty good like active and really close knit tight social life growing up, right? So I had a lot of these like girlfriends that I felt like a true soulmate level like deep connection with people, and I thought that these people would be in my life for the rest of my life. And then you get older, then you start struggling, and then your values, shift and things like that, and you start to become aware of a newer version of yourself that's trying to birth through into this reality, and you realize that every time you hang out with these people, the energy is not there anymore. You feel distant, you feel even sad, you feel a sense of loss, like, what is this? As if something that used to be so bright and full of life is like dwindling away, and it's really sad because sometimes in the beginning it can feel like a really slow death where you keep trying to make the relationship work, but every time that you are in that situation or with those people, it's like a piece of you dies every single time, and it's really sad, and it feels very empty, and there's a lot of loss. And I would argue that a lot of times what we're grieving is not even the person. What we grieve is the version of ourselves that we were when we were in that relationship. And there used to be a timeline where both of your energies work together, and because it worked together, there was this like effortless exchange of energy, and that exchange of energy felt very expansive. It felt very connected. It gave you a lot of love. And I think most importantly, it gives you a sense of belonging and feeling seen. And then all of a sudden, when both of you guys are no longer on the same trajectory anymore, it feels like a grief and a loss. And I would say that the root of that loss is the loss of your old self. And so, really, this is like a theme that I feel like I always talk about on this channel, which is that everything, like most struggles that we experience in our life and most suffering that we experience, is because we're resisting an inner death of our own identities that we're grasping onto, right? And when it comes to relationships changing, it's because we're grasping onto an identity of ourselves that we used to be when we were in that relationship. And now we're like grasping onto it for dear life because we want to replicate that feeling of love and belonging. And you're not realizing that you actually have greater love and belonging on the other side of this. But because you haven't experienced more genuine love and belonging before, you think that what you experienced before was like the height of what you could experience, right? Like when you haven't experienced real, true, unconditional love, or like real platonic love, or just real, true connection, authentic connection with people, you're gonna think that like superficial levels of stimulation with people and superficial levels of connection with people, you're going to think that that is the epitome of love. So then when you start to lose that, you're going to start grasping onto that because you think that that's what the epitome of love is, and you don't realize that there's actually better and purer and more honest forms of love coming your way if you allow yourself to be authentic. And so then that brings up the question of, what do relationships look like when you actually choose authenticity? So when you choose authenticity, it's, I will say it's interesting because when you really are an authentic person, or at least you value authenticity and you are always, moving that direction at most times in life, you're going to find that when you build relationships, it happens slower. So, a lot of people build their relationships based off of ego, right? If you just take a look, most people are bonding because they just so happen to be in the right places at the right time, and they have shared experiences. Even if their core feelings or core beliefs are out of whack, they have shared experiences. Um, in the same vein, a lot of people have the same shared traumas and the same shared limiting beliefs. And so when they're in relationships with other people who have the same limiting beliefs, it gives them a sense of validation that I am I am valid in my smallness, right? Like a lot of people need to feel like what they're doing is the right thing because deep down they know that they're not living the life that they want to live. And when they see other people who are limiting them, like limiting themselves in the same way that you are limiting yourself, you feel validated in that. And it prevents you from actually breaking out of the box that you've put yourself in. And so a lot of people are in those trauma bonds with each other because they're avoiding their pain. It's really a form of bonding that allows you to avoid your pain. Or another form of relationships is that like a lot of people are in relationships because they feel that it places them somewhere higher on a hierarchy. And the reason that they do this is because they've been conditioned and brainwashed to believe that their power is extrinsic. So they believe that they have to get power from outside of themselves because they really believe that they intrinsically are not enough. And so if you have that core belief, then you're going to constantly be somebody who is seeking power and validation from outside of yourself because you don't realize and you don't know that the power is inside of yourself. So these are all like different mechanisms that people form a lot of inauthentic relationships on. And the downside to that is when you build relationships based off of fear and inadequacy or the need for validation or shame or shared trauma in general, that's not meant to last because fear and ego is not meant to be sustainable. It's not durable, right? Your ego and your fear and your survival mechanisms, they were created to protect you in the short term. So like if a lion jumps out at me, my fear will protect me. It will keep me away from the lion or whatever I said. Did I say lion or tiger? I have no idea, but it'll keep you away from, the crazy animal that comes at you. But you're not meant to stay in that forever and it's not sustainable. And so any relationship or anything that you build in life that is built on the foundation of fear and of ego, it will collapse. And you are likely somebody who's perceptible enough that you've noticed this, right? You've noticed how a lot of groups and relationships and codependent scenarios just always end up crashing and burning, including your own, because it's not meant to last. On the flip side, when you choose authenticity and you pick that path in your life that you're going to heal yourself and you're going to become the most you that you can possibly be, the way that relationships form changes now, right? Like your relationship building and the path and the framework through which relationships operate completely changes. So you begin to actually experience true forms of intimacy, and real intimacy is slow, right? Real love is slow. It's patient. Ooh, burp. It's gentle. It's taking its time to understand the crevices. It doesn't get really like sucked in by the high highs and the low lows. A lot of us are so like attached to these dopamine hits that we choose the chaotic relationship over the one that's calm and grounding and regulated. But true intimacy will feel gentle. It will feel slow. It's patient. Real love moves slowly. So that's how you know that you are kind of changing the frameworks through which you are forming your relationships, because when you choose authenticity, your relationships, you're not going to build relationships in the same way that other people do, right? The way that you become close with people is slowly. It's with time, it's with experience, it's through friction and through solving conflicts as opposed to avoiding them. Because when you experience the low lows with people and then you figure out how to work through them with the other person, that builds intimacy. That makes you guys closer, right? It creates this feeling of like we can get through it and we can manage each other's darkness and we can come out stronger and closer on the other side. So that's what happens when you choose authenticity, is that the process of you building a relationship is slower, it's calmer, but the relationships are longer. Like they last longer. They're not like up and down, up and down, up and down, and then it crashes and burns, right? Your connections, you'll notice in your life that your connections actually end up lasting through a lot of phases in life because again, the bond is not through something that is transient in nature. You're not bonding through shared experiences because we're all experiencing different things all the time. So eventually, the shared experience that you're sharing is going to die out. So when you are forming your bonds on something that is eternal, such as authenticity and being yourself, those connections will be able to withstand a lot of the traumas and the turbulence of life itself. And so you'll notice that your relationships tend to become stronger, they tend to last longer and become less flippant. And they'll be something slower and more patient and more gentle and a little bit more constant in feeling. But in between you going from the former types of relationships that I was describing to the types of relationships that I just described, there's like an isolation period. And that isolation period is really hard because, like I said before, you're grieving all of your oldest versions of yourself. You're releasing all of those attachment patterns that created codependency and like anxious or avoidant attachment style. You are becoming silent so you can actually regulate your nervous system, and then you're also becoming yourself so that you can figure out what your values are so that when you go back out into the world, you can find other people who have the same values, not the same trauma bonding, right? But the same values. And that's something that a lot of people don't ever even identify within themselves, and they keep repeating the same relationships over and over and over again. So that hermit period, that isolation period feels really uncomfortable because it's like all your relationships are up in the air and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know what to do. Everything is up in the air. But I promise you, if you're going through that, just know that it will integrate on its own. And it's not just because you feel like you're not able to connect with all these people anymore. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to lose every single one of those relationships, okay? There's some people that you will lose. There's some people that are gonna go, for good. But I would argue that most of the people are not going to leave your life forever. The relationship just changes form. right? There's a little bit more healthy distance in between you and the people that no longer align with you. There's a different way of you engaging in that relationship, and maybe you don't have the same closeness anymore, but it will change form and it will feel balanced again, and you will figure out how to operate within that relationship again from a healthier way. Burp again. But you have to give it time, and you have to trust that isolation period, because that isolation period is really what's going to allow you to get to a place of integration. But like I said, you want to really be aware. Like, the key to this is becoming aware of of how you want to conduct your relationships in the future, and recognizing that the whole pattern of how you're forming your relationships is changing, and that's why it feels really uncomfortable. That's why it feels like such an identity crisis, because it's literally like the way that you are relating to people as a whole through yourself, right, through your own identity, is completely changing. And so it requires a lot of like training wheels and learning who you are, and like literally learning how to conduct relationships again as if you were a baby from the bottom up. But like I said, it will happen on its own. You have to trust that integration period. You have to trust the isolation that you go through. And you have to trust that, all these relationships that you feel like you're losing, they're just changing form. Some of them will die. And if they die, trust that the space that's being created is going to invite new connections that show you a pure and more real form of love. But a lot of these relationships are just changing form, and they will reorganize themselves in their own way through their own magic. You just have to stay committed to your authenticity, stay committed to learning how to conduct relationships and how to be in relationship with the other in a new way that is more authentic, and allow yourself to kind of just notice those patterns of how your relationships are actually changing for the good, because you're choosing to come from authenticity. So that's my little spiel today. Hopefully that helps somebody out there who's going through it, because that's definitely one of the harder parts, I think, of the healing journey, is when you start to kind of feel the total collapse of your relationships and you're just like feeling super unsteady. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. If anybody else has experienced that, comment down below like the different things and the methods that you use to learn how to kind of put yourself out into the world all over again. And yeah, if there were like any tips that you have for other people going through it. But that's all I really wanted to go into today. So happy New Year's. I hope everybody has a really great rest of the year, and I hope that your New Year's is full of a lot of joy and peace and positive vibes. And I'll probably see y'all in 2026. So I'll see you then. Bye.